and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
My name's David Kaufman, Outreach Coordinator at the Sebring Terror Trail, and you are listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast.
Hi, it's Heather. I'm the co-owner of the 17th Door Haunted House, and you are listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast.
Hey, this is Jeff Tucker from Knott's Berry Farm, and you're listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast.
Hello, this is David Cantu, the creator of the Haunted Storage Yard here in Burbank, California, celebrating its 9th season, and you're listening to a very special haunt series of the Coaster Challenge podcast.
Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? Yes, I accept the Coaster Challenge. Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? Coaster Challenge podcast is here. It's time to face your fears. Get that theme park therapy and lend us both your Coaster Challenge podcast is here. Your fear can disappear. We know that theme park therapy can dry up all your tears. Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? Yes, I accept the Coaster Challenge. Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? We accept because you know we're not average.
You're listening to the Coaster Challenge podcast. A journey where people become fearful to fearless, all from riding roller coasters. So please, secure your hats and glasses and keep your hands and arms inside the podcast. It's time to accept the Coaster Challenge with your hosts, Andrew Locke.
Hey everyone, this is Andrew, one of the producers of the Coaster Challenge podcast with you. We've got a very, very special guest here today for one of our haunt episodes here for our third season. For many people, theme park haunts are a fairly recent pursuit, something that they maybe have started enjoying over the past 10 to 15 years. They're becoming more and more popular over that time. But the reality is that theme park haunts have been around for a much, much longer time. And in fact, the original theme park haunt is celebrating its 50th season this year, which is just wild. So today, I'm very excited. We're going to be talking all about the 50-year history of this theme park haunt. So joining us once again, the only guest to have been on every single season of our podcast thus far, a warm welcome back to Jeff Tucker from Knott Scary Farm. Hey Jeff, how are you?
I'm great. I'm in the thick of it, so I'm great. Good
You're
to
in
be back.
You're in the thick of the fog, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
That's great. That's great. So Jeff, we're going to do two things today. That one I already kind of mentioned, the other, I'll mention right now. But the first is looking back at the past, 49 years, 5 decades, if you will, of Scary Farm. And as you, as someone that's been involved with Scary Farm for a long time now, working at Knott's for over 25 years, you're probably, one of the best authorities out there to talk about it. And I know you're, really big on the history of Scary Farm. So I'm looking forward to discussing that, looking at the past, but also looking at the present and the future, which is this 50th year, this upcoming season here of Scary Farm and what's going on with that. So we'll talk about that, at the latter part, the second half of the interview. But first, let's talk about the history of the past. So first of all, for you personally, Jeff, now this doesn't necessarily refer to you working at Knott's. This is you just being a guest at Knott's. When was the first time that you attended Knott's Scary Farm?
1987.
1987.
1987. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. So almost 30 years ago.
Yeah, I was in high school. I knew about Scary Farm, but the commercials on TV and the commercials on radio were terrifying. And I was like, I'm not going there. That sounds terrifying. And 1987, I was 16, and my friends were like, hey, we're going. So you want to go? And I was like, this is it. Let's go. Because it's a rite of passage here in Southern California.
Right.
It's a Halloween tradition. You get your friends and you go to Knott's Scary Farm when you're a teenager, and it becomes a lifelong passion because you chase that first high. That first time you went, you don't know what it is. You know that it's scary. You've got all these ideas of what it might be, and then what it is it surpasses all of that. It was great.
Right, that's fantastic. So 87, and I we're recording this here on a Friday, and I've had a very busy week, weeks, months. I've been traveling a lot, and
you're
so
always on the cruise.
Yeah, I love cruises, Jeff. we could have a whole podcast conversation where you interview me about cruises.
Well, your posts are always had a great cruise, had a great time, and then the next day it's like starting a cruise.
Yeah.
I just feel like you never touch land. You're like what's his name? Orlando Bloom in Pirates of the Caribbean. You never touch dry land at the end.
Well, I think that's very well put. And kind of another thing that's been said about me recently by a very close friend of mine, my friend Freddie, that's so true, is he said that I officially have achieved tourist status here in Orlando, where I technically live. I'm here about as often as a lot of tourists are, but yeah, no, I've been traveling, to cruises in Vegas and going to parks. I did a big Midwest road trip, doing, a trip, as I was just mentioning before we start recording, a 10-day trip out to California, amongst other things, to go to Scary Farm for more than once for the first time ever in a given season. Got my season pass for it for the first time ever.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
There's so much to do at Scary Farm. It takes more than one night.
Oh yeah. Yeah. This way I don't have the pressure. Because the way I usually do Scary Farm, it's running around like a madman, because I only got that one night, versus the other haunts that I go to, like Halloween Horror Nights here in Orlando, which is tonight's the first night, so I'm excited about that, but I'm not stressed about it like I, so to speak, would be with Scary Farm, because I've got my frequent fear pass and I'm going to go, 8, 10, 12, 15 times, or whatever many times I go, with different friends and all that. So I've got the time to really take it all in. But Scary Farm, I usually have to rush it, and I still enjoy it, Jeff. But it's probably not sinking in as much as it could otherwise. So that's why this year I'm really excited, to do the season pass and do several nights, and I'm going with different friends, they're in California, people visiting. So it's going to be, really special. I think I'm really excited about it. So
sure, it's going to be great.
Yeah, lots of travel. But again, with everything, all the travel I've got going on, everything else I got going on, I'm usually really good at math, but I screwed up the math here, and I'm first to admit it. So 87, that's actually almost 40 years. So
why do you have to say that? What's wrong with you?
So yeah, I mean, you've been going to Scary Farm for, basically what's about 30, 36, 37 years.
Yeah.
Or being involved with it. Yeah. Yeah.
I even went to the first night of Universal's Horror Nights in Hollywood.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, the first ever.
The first ever. They didn't even know what they were doing. It was bewildering. It was so crazy. When you exited, they had people with clipboards. Would you like to give your opinion? I was like, sure. I'll give you my. I didn't work any. I worked at in what, that was 90. I would say it was 91 or 92. Remember?
Right.
It was 90 or 91. I was working at Spencer Gifts, so I was like, yeah, I know a little bit about Halloween selling costumes, because Spencer Gifts created Spirit, because the Spirit stores used to be inside the Spencer Gifts. That was what we did. All of our business in Halloween at Spencer Gifts. So I was involved in selling all Halloween masks, costumes, display items for your yard back before that stuff was popular.
That's crazy. Wow, you've been at the forefront of so much, from that, and what you told us about the first time I interviewed you in season 1, talking about building your haunt, at your home there with all those doors,
with all the doors.
Yeah. It's just wild. So so almost 40 years now you've been involved with Scary Farm one way or another, either as a guest or more recently, certainly, as someone who helps create the event. So you definitely clearly are an authority. So that's, I already knew that anyway. I didn't realize it went back that far. That's awesome. So with those, 36 years or so of going to Scary Farm or being involved with Scary Farm, and this next question, this could be, again, you being as a guest earlier on or being involved with, creating Scary Farm each year. Talk about some of your favorite memories. You're a great storyteller, Jeff. Talk about some of your favorite Scary Farm memories from the past.
Well, in 1987, I went with my high school friend, Toby, and he didn't quite grasp the concept of the log ride. It was done up as Bigfoot's Mountain. And at the apex of it, there was a Bigfoot with a big log on a rubber bungee, and he would throw it down at you and then pull it back up. And Toby thought he could run. So he spent the whole ride running behind me in place with his arms and legs pumping. And I kept going, Toby, you can't go anywhere. And that was such an amazing, he's trying to get away. It was great.
So he was sitting in the log on the log flume and trying to get away?
Yeah, trying to run. Yeah, it was great.
I mean, is this
Fantastic.
guy, or was he really trying to get away? I mean,
Oh, he was terrified. Terrified. He
Wow.
was terrified.
Wow. So now that first year that you went in '87?
Yeah, that was the first year. Yeah.
Okay, so was that like a just a basic animatronic or just like a dummy?
It was a guy in a costume.
It was a guy in a costume back then. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And then the other thing, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. We went to the haunted shack, and I believe it was Toxichem, where it was a toxic waste spill. So they had mutants and giant bugs, and we got stopped right at the front, because they were metering as people went in. We got stopped right at the front, and I stopped, and I knew the guy at the front. It was a guy who was like an advisor at high school for the drama department, of which I was a big part of. And I realized, oh, all the drama kids graduate and then move on to events like this where you can still do the drama kid thing. And that was a big click in my head, like, oh, that's something to aspire to, because it's all acting and drama, and it's all wrapped up in that. So that was really cool.
Nice. That's really awesome. That's really cool. I have a little small world story there. Your the first story you mentioned, about your friend there that was so scared on the log ride there, Timber Mountain log ride. So that we're not doing a normal interview here today, Jeff, but if you were going through, and I remember I did this with you with your first interview, kind of asking you a question like this about the craziest moment on a ride or a theme park attraction or whatnot. That would be a great crazy moment right there, is someone that's so scared on a haunted log ride attraction that they're trying to run away and get away, and they're sitting down, they can't get anywhere, and how scared they are. That's great. And you also mentioned, as you confirmed, that it was someone in a costume. It was a scare actor, a creature. And I know things have changed over the years at Scary Farm for various reasons. You used to have live actors on the Timber Mountain log ride, Halloween Hootenanny, and on the Calico Mine ride, and so forth. And I know, like, especially with Calico, after you guys did that wild and really great multi-million-dollar refurbishment, what was it, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, you couldn't really have live actors in there anymore because they would potentially damage the theming and all the work you guys did, and you're trying to protect that investment. So you guys are doing technology things and really nice things. Actually, it's been getting better and better with the plussing up of Calico Mine Ride for Scary Farm. And I think again that keeps getting better and better without live actors. But I remember, I have not been going to Scary Farm as long as you, Jeff. The first year for me, I think, was 2000 or so. But back in those days, you would still have the live actors. You have them with the chainsaws on the log ride, and all that wild stuff. And I feel lucky that I can have those experiences, because again, things are different these days. So
yeah, it's just a matter of the rehab. You don't want people or decor, because it's very invasive putting all that decor in there.
Right. Yeah, it's delicate, and you don't want to damage anything. Totally makes sense. But
we did you experience the Calico Mine Ride with the Witch's Keep?
What year was that?
That was just a few years ago. It wasn't that long ago.
I think if it was in 2021, because that sounds familiar. I don't,
because we did a thing during the day where the mine gets turned to candy. So there's all these big candy props in there, and all the miners are talking about how they've struck a vein of chocolate, and we're going to pursue it all the way, and that sort of thing. And I wrote all the dialogue. I did. It was great because we had to take a hike through the ride, like on foot, and I had to write all the locations that they wanted audio, and then take like a picture of what the character looked like, what he was doing, so that the audio would make sense, right?
Right.
So we did that for the day, and then we switched over to the night. They did Witch's Keep, but you still have all this candy. So the story became the witch is luring children into the mine with the candy, and then she's eating the children, right?
Right.
So I wrote all this dialogue where you can hear the children like, "Let's go in there. That looks like fun." And oh my gosh, I'm lost. I can't get out. And then the final scene is like the kids are terrified. We brought these actors in, and they did a great job. And you hear the witch destroying them and eating them. And I remember online reading like, "That's over the line, Knotts." That's over the line. And I'm like, is there one? I know there is a line, but usually it's about, nudity and that kind of thing. But this was just audio. Like there's no representations of children in the riot or anything like that. Nothing like that. I just was like, wow, the power of just lights out audio. You can do almost anything and really scare people.
Right. No, absolutely. No, I have experienced that based on your description. It does ring a bell of, I think it was in 2021. And then last year, there was something similar. Certainly the Calico Mine Ride, again, during Scary Farm was very creepy. It stopped in a couple sections for the storytelling, creepy music and the dialogue. So
I don't think they advertise it anymore because they don't want people to get their hopes up that there's going to be actors in there. Like it's just a run through. It's just a quick overlay. It's nothing to. It's not worth a 3-hour line. If you advertise it as a big attraction, you get a 3-hour line, and the people are like, I can't believe I waited 3 hours, and it's just audio.
So this year, Jeff, and again, we're going to talk more about this season, the 50th season here later on, but. Is the Calico Mine Ride going to have that kind of witches or something similar overlay during Scary Farm where it's got those creepy moments?
I don't know.
You don't know.
There's a lot going on that I'm not privy to because I'm sort of stuck in my corner. So if it is, they're not advertising it for the very reasons I just explained.
Right. Of course. Well, I'm curious to check it out. I love that ride anyway, so I always try to do it when I'm there at the farm, even during the day. So with the 3 days I'm going to be there, the 3 nights, I should say, I'm sure I'll have time to check it out.
Sure.
And you mentioned the people, reviewing online saying it went over the line. I guess this is a fun story to tell you. You definitely appreciate this. So as you mentioned, I've been going on a lot of cruises, and in particular, I've been doing a lot of Royal Caribbean cruises on various ships, but one of the ships I've been going on numerous times because it does a lot of weekend cruises out of Port Canaveral, right near Orlando, here where I live. It's very easy, works with my schedule. It's called the Independence of the Seas. Now, they change up the shows on the ship to some degree, but there's certain things are the same. And one of the things that's the same is the cruise director. He's not going to change each week just because I'm getting on the ship again to make it different for me. Obviously, it's not about me. So it's the same cruise director. His name's Dennis, really funny guy. And because he's there all the time, he's going he's doing the opening acts. He's introducing, the comedians and the variety acts. And by the way, Ed Alonzo, of course, Ed Alonzo.
Yeah, sure. He's a good friend.
Yeah, he was on one of those cruises on the Independence recently, and I got to see him. And in fact, it's in the other room, but I was sitting up front with my friend, and he actually gave me one of his props. He handed it to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's great. I love magic. But anyways, getting back to my story. So when he does the adult comedy show, which is the one I always go to, the late night comedy show, he, warned people 18 and up only. And, if you get offended easily, you might want to leave. And he always says the same thing, which is he says, now, if you get offended easily, what I recommend you do is you leave right now. You go down to deck 1, go to the medical center, and they'll remove that rod from your ass very quickly. So, it's just that people get offended so easily these days. And we're going to talk more about that later with one of the things that's coming back to Scary Farm this year. But I love that you guys really, and this is one of the things that makes Scary Farm, Scout's Honor, not just because I'm talking to you, my favorite theme park haunt. I love horror nights. I'm going tonight. I'm excited for opening weekend, but Scary Farm is where it's at for me. And one of the things about it is you guys don't have that limit that other theme parks do in terms of where they stop themselves. You guys really push things in various ways in how scary it is and how, non-PC the humor can be, even the past few years. You guys with the Great Puppet Up show. I mean, that is very inappropriate, and I love it. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
And I was glad to do it while it was still there. It's not there this year. You
can see one behind me right here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Nice little Muppet behind you there from Henson Company. Very nice. So I love that you guys do that. So actually, that's a good segue here into the next couple of questions. So. Again, you guys have been around for 50 years, and I just talked about how you guys really push the envelope. So can you talk about how Scary Farm has evolved over the years, maybe in terms of pushing the envelope and any other ways?
Oh, yeah, sure. We invented this event, so we push the envelope to make ourselves better, to give the guests a better experience. when you look at, here's an example. When you go online and people say, it used to be a lot scarier. And I always, if people ask me that in person, I go, well, it used to be a lot younger too. It used to be that you were afraid of the closet with a monster in the closet and the monster in the bed. I'm afraid now of the bills that come in the mail. Like, that's terror. What came today? It's coming for me. Right. So how we evolve as people also evolves what scares us. I mean, your whole podcast is about that, so that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If you look at old footage of mazes, and there is some on YouTube. The Orange County Archives has partnered with some people to put some up, and they're fantastic to see, but they're not very scary, and they're not decorated very well. Haunted houses, mazes used to be black walls punctuated by a guy in a werewolf mask. He'd pop out from a wall and pop back in. So it's evolved in more immersive, more details, really making you feel like you're there, and more importantly, telling a better story.
Right.
Used to be the maze. Oh, it's scary, but what's it about? I don't know. It's scary. It's a scary maze. But now it's like, no, I'm going into like a movie. I'm walking into the movie screen and being a part of it. And you can see the evolution through the years of how mazes went from generic monster mazes like the Kiwanis would put on in the park. You go in and there's a Frankenstein, a mummy, and a skeleton, and there's a witch at the end who gives you a piece of candy. Scary Farm has evolved because we have these great locations to put them in, and some of the mazes that stand out over the years, like Industrial Evil, was an apocalypse maze that seemed to go on forever with really good theming for the 80s. The 90s had Dominion of the Dead, which was this immersive vampire maze. And even that one had a lot of blank walls because you need to get from one room to the next, right?
Right.
Then in the early 2000s, a maze called Malice in Wonderland was built. And they decided at that point there would be no empty space, paint everything. And that became one of the first big, like, wow, this is a work of art. I'm part of it. It's not just, we're not just saying you're going in it, you're actually going to Wonderland. It was one of the first mazes. The clown maze was the first, but it was one of the early adopters of the 3D glasses where you put them on and then the paint sort of lifts off the wall. We were the first ones to do that. It's evolved over the years, all the way up until gigantic attractions like Special Ops, where you're firing a rifle at zombies, and Trapped, where you're the only group you see and you better figure this out or you're not getting out. So it's been a real nice progression with a lot of just really innovative stuff, where you see it here and then it gets duplicated other places, which is the biggest. I mean, talk about sliding. Sliding began here and now it's in virtually every haunt-themed, Halloween-themed attraction around the world.
Yep. You guys invented it, just like so many other things. Yeah. And in my opinion, the sliders are the best there at Scary Farm. They're so passionate about what they do and so good.
They turned it into a sport.
Yeah.
For God's sake.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe you told me about that. No, that's fantastic. Yeah, no, that makes sense. The evolution and again, have not gone as long as you have there to Scary Farm, but going back now almost 25 years is when the first time I went in 2000. And yeah, I've definitely seen the evolution where, things are used to be with the blank walls and now they're much more intricate.
Well, also, when I started work here in 94, Scary Farm didn't start until the second week of October.
Right.
And it was only for like 2 weeks. It was like 12 nights. And that's the way the Knott family ran it. It wasn't until Cedar Fair took over in the late 90s and the early 2000s, we had a general manager here named Jack Falfus, who was a visionary, who really pushed it. More nights, more mazes, more monsters. We can make it massive. And then there was a time when some of the other parks didn't do it. We were the only game in town. So we were just exploding with creativity. And then you have competition, which makes your event better. If people always ask if we're in competition with horror nights and stuff, and I say, no, we're in competition with ourselves. We want to do better than last year.
Right. Because you always have that comparison to make. It's not like you guys are creating a brand new event that's never been done before. Each year you're doing the same kind of themed event, but you want to make it better and different. And
you learn. I mean, you learn stuff.
Yeah, and you learn from what you've done. Absolutely. That's part of what makes it so special. It's a good point. You mentioned Trapped, and you and I talked all about Trapped because you could tell when I did that first interview with you a couple of years ago, I had never heard of Trapped, didn't know about it because I didn't go to Scary Farm in those years. I was busy with other things and not nearby. But I became very fascinated with everything you were telling me about. And I've read up on it, and I've talked to people that have done it, things like that. But sadly, I never got to do Trapped. But I just did something. I was just in Las Vegas. Had a great time. Got to see, we're talking about Magic, Ed Alonso. Again, I'm a huge fan of Magic. Got to see David Copperfield, one of my childhood bucket list items.
Yeah, he's one of the greats.
Oh, he is. So
amazing. When I was a kid, I never missed a David Copperfield special.
Oh, yeah, same. Yeah. I grew up in the 80s with him, Statue of Liberty and all that.
Mm-hmm. David Copperfield, Doug Henning. I never missed any of those.
Oh, yeah.
Penn and Teller.
Oh, yeah. I've seen them too. But yeah, Copperfield was so great, and his show, it was a great illusion and so much audience involvement, constantly bringing people from the audience and throwing things at people in the audience, getting them involved, picking people randomly by whoever catches the ball with a frisbee and all these crazy things. But the storytelling that was part of his show too was so inspiring because it's all about him and his relationship with his dad and how his dad, kept his dream alive and encouraged him, and just such great storytelling, great special effects. But another thing I did while I was in Vegas, because I'm mentioning Trapped, is I'm really into escape rooms, which again, that's why I would have loved to have done Trapped. I love haunts, I love escape rooms. I did my first ever haunt escape room, and it's and I'm doing another one when I go back to Vegas in a couple months from the same company there in Vegas. They have an It escape room, and then they have a Saw licensed, with from the movie franchises, licensed by the studios, WB for It and so forth. And actually, they have two separate escape rooms, Chapter 1, Chapter 2. Big fan of the movies and the miniseries and the book. Stephen King is amazing, and again, never experienced a haunt escape room. And I did both Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. I'm doing Saw when I go back, but oh my god, so good. And I was thinking, Jeff, literally while I was going through it, wow, this must have been a little bit what Trap was like.
Yeah. Now, do those have live actors, or are they just?
Oh yeah. There are live actors. Pennywise is chasing you and creeping up on you. They have live actors that guide you through it. There's crazy special effects. There's fireworks that go off inside these warehouses that they use. Really, the theming is fantastic. To give you an example, Jeff, I'm sure you're a fan of It, right? Because you're a big fan of horror.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, so I read the book in high school.
Yeah, there you go. Chapter 2, that escape room starts with the Chinese restaurant, and they literally have the hostess. Yes, decorated like the Chinese restaurant. You walk into the next room, and it's a big dining room. There's tables with fake food out, and there's a puzzle in there that's recreated with Lazy Susans and very creative puzzles. Just if you ever in Vegas anytime near future, Jeff, or any listeners, highly recommend checking out these escape rooms, as well as I'm sure the Saw one's going to be amazing too. But yeah, it gave me a sense of what Trap was. So, I don't know, maybe, given what Knott's is doing this year, I have a little hope that something else from the past maybe might come back eventually. Maybe another version of Trap might come. You never know. I can hope. I can dream, right?
I'm always working on it. Trust, that's my baby, so I'm always working on it.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That was one of your things you're most proud of, understandably, for sure. So here's an interesting question. This is kind of throwing a wrench in the works. How would you have done anything differently, if anything, in terms of your involvement with Scary Farm over the past, have you been involved, about 25 years now yourself, or?
Yeah. No, almost 30.
Almost 30.
This is year 29 for me.
29. Wow. That's amazing. That's awesome. So is there anything that you, looking back, would have done differently?
Well, you do things differently if you had more budget. It's always about the budget. You're limited by how much money you've got. Because I've done multiple shows in Mystery Lodge that end on these big high notes of monsters racing through the building. And it's always a challenge to get those monsters there to do that, because you don't want to pay somebody to work for 35 seconds every 2 hours. So It's always been that challenge. So no, the thing is, you don't have regrets of doing it differently. You simply do it differently the next year. Like I said earlier, like you learn your lesson and you apply what you've learned, because we did 3 years of Trapped. The first year we were making it up as we went along. The second year had its challenges, and everything that had come before it culminated in that third year of, okay, we've learned it all, let's apply it. The only thing we didn't learn was we need more rehearsal, because you can rehearse your actors until the cows come home, but you don't know what the guests are going to do.
Right.
And I think we've talked about the first night of year 3, the park closed at 1, but because we were backed up because of people not figuring it out or we not explaining the rules properly,
Right.
we didn't have the last guest exit that year until 3:45 a.m.
Crazy.
And it's my thing. So I was standing there right there to get yelled at because I've kept them waiting multiple hours. And the 2 guys who walked out looked at me and said, "It's the best Halloween thing we've ever done, dude." And I personally walked them through the park back to the gate because the park, long closed.
Right. That's crazy. Well, at least there was a positive aspect of that, where the guests, they had waited all that time, but they loved it. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, not surprising they loved it, of course. You mentioned the shows you've done over the years, at the Mystery Lodge. I've gotten to see one of them, the most recent one, which was Imitation of Terror from 2 years ago, which, I've talked to you about this. I think I talked about it last year in the interview, and I've talked about it offline too, how much I loved it. And yeah, we were there, what was it, the second or third night of the event, where you guys still had those actors running through at the end, which I was not ready for. That was so good. Such a great show. And the special effects, I used the effects of the Mystery Lodge there, Pepper's Ghost and all that. So the storytelling, the humor combined with the horror, which is again a trademark of yours, so good. And then last year, we were talking about how innovative Scary Farm has been, and how the mazes you guys have done over the past number of years, more recently, are works of art and so immersive, which I love. And Horror Nights does that too. There's no blank hallways, at least here in Orlando. There haven't been for years. And I love that. And, speaking of last year, you went from 2 years ago having the Invitation of Terror, introducing the grimoire lore about the book Grimoire. And then you did the maze about the grimoire last year, which I'm so excited to go back through again this year, because it was, I would say, it was easily my favorite maze from last year, if not one of my favorite mazes from Knott's of all time. The creativity of that maze, going past the campfire multiple times, and the black and white room, simulating going back in the years past, and just how you guys were able to create time travel in a haunt maze.
Yeah.
Without any, it's not like, you're going into, the classic, like Star Trek. You guys, I've talked about the, Star Trek experience, how they did the trick where they had the walls come up, in the fog, and then the lights were off to make it look like you went from some custodian closet or whatever it was onto the transporter pad, and that gag is so good that Disney introduced a brand new ride, the new Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, last year, using that same gag for their pre-show. 30 years later or so since Star Trek, but just such a great effect. But you guys can't do stuff like that in a haunt maze, because you don't have, you can't have that kind of stuff, that kind of walls coming up and things like that. But to so creatively, within the bounds of doing a haunt maze and what is practical, being able to create the idea, the sense that you're going through time different, that's so creative, so amazing.
Yeah, well, that's a tribute to the designers. They're good at what they do. They're amazing at what they do.
Yep, they are amazing. Yes, absolutely. A little pun there, absolutely. All right, Jeff. Well, enough about the past. We don't want to dwell on the past. It's nice to be nostalgic and reflect back, but we have to talk all about this year's event. So, here we are recording, a few weeks before the event actually starts. But in that time frame, about a week ago or so now, and you specifically wanted to not have this interview until after this pivotal event. Knott's hosted a special event where I think it was a combination of you invited media, bloggers, etc., and also people, general public, could buy tickets for the event, right?
Yeah, $20.
Right. Yeah. If I was living in California still, was out there for some reason, I definitely would have bought a ticket and come. But I watched it as several friends of mine did remotely, the live stream. And I didn't know what to expect, who was going to be out there. And then, I was really thrilled to see that you were the master of ceremonies and did a wonderful job with it, Jeff. And
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just introducing everything, talking about what was coming back in previous years, what's new for this year. It's so exciting. So exciting. So can you, before we dive into some details, if you want to just highlight again for our listeners, maybe the people that haven't watched that live stream or the recording of it or gone to the Not Scary Farm website or read up on it, those that are still in the dark or in the fog, can you kind of just highlight what's new for the haunt this year?
Yeah, we have 3 new mazes. We have room 13, which is connected to the Goring 20s scare zone. So we've had this Goring 20s for a couple of years now, and there's all this lore about the Blind Tiger Speakeasy and the Devil's Elixir drink. And now you get to learn and experience like what really happened that night back in the 20s that caused all these people to die, which is going to be great and beautiful. Like it's Art Deco, so it's going to be really beautiful.
Nice.
We have Cinema Slasher over at Boardwalk Ballroom that's taking over where Dark Ride was. Has some big shoes to fill, but it's a stellar concept of a movie theater where you get to see the movie on the screen and then walk through the screen into the movie. And all of the movies are based off of prior mazes that we had here. So you get to experience not only the past, but the future and this new concept of, scary movies. And, I love all that stuff. Popcorn and screaming in the dark. It's fantastic. Then we have the Chilling Chambers up front, taking the place of Pumpkin Eater. That's a tribute maze. It's going to have rooms dedicated to remembering some of the best mazes we've done in the past, all hosted by a guy called The Keeper, who is based off of Seymour, who was a horror movie host who hosted the first Scary Farm in 1973. And we've been working with his family to get all these details right and remember him properly. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, wow. That's a great throwback to the first year.
Yeah.
Very here for a big anniversary year. That's great.
Yeah. Somebody was in the audience was like, we did a thing at the Midsummer Scream. And when they brought up Seymour at the 73, one lady goes, "I was there." And I'm like, how old are you? You got to be in your 70s to remember that. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's
right.
It's impressive.
No, absolutely.
And
So
then,
sorry. Go ahead.
We have Monsters, Music and Mayhem in the big Walter Knott Theater. That's a song and dance rock and review. Again, paying homage to a lot of the mazes and scare zones and Seymour and Wolfman Jack and all that. So that's going to be great. That's put together by my good friend and colleague, KC, who's done some of the best shows we've done here. We have the Carnival du Grotesque on the Calico Mine stage, where it's freak shows and fire eating and all that. They've done that in the last couple of years. That's been really great. And then there's a new scare zone. The Gauntlet is coming back. That's a scare zone that debuted in the 90s. It was actually the first zone to use the term scare zone, because up until that point it was just ghost town streets. And They said, no, we're going to create a new scare zone over in Camp Snoopy and turn it into the Gauntlet, which is a medieval themed Renaissance gone wrong, jesters and kings and queens, that sort of thing. And then, of course, in the Birdcage Theater, the return of Dr. Cleaver, which is a cute little melodrama show that's dirty and sexy and funny all at the same time, which I've just spent the last week directing the actors to their spots. And then Tuesday night, because Monday's a holiday. Tuesday night, I start directing the Wagon Camp show, which is the return of The Hanging.
Yes.
Uncanceled. After a 4-year absence.
Yes, that's awesome. That's awesome. Wow, lots of new stuff. That's great. You mentioned the Goring 20s and that scare zone. A great scare zone. And it's awesome that you guys are creating a maze about it, because I think that'll do well, because it's very popular in general. It's not just something I like. Well, it seems like a lot of people enjoy that scare zone. So that's fantastic. And Cinema Slasher, yeah, as you mentioned, it's got big shoes to fill with Dark Ride. Dark Ride was there for many years, and what was one of the best mazes I think you guys have ever done. So creative, and how you guys plussed it over the years. I got to see it the last year of it. I think I got to see the first year of Dark Ride. Was the first year around 2017? Was that around there?
Yeah, 16 or 17. It replaced Dead of Winter, which was not very popular.
Yeah. So I think because I was there in 2017, I think I got to experience the first year of Dark Ride and see the changes over the years. But yeah, and that's something that is nice. Yeah, okay, fine. You guys don't change all of your mazes every year, but there is a plus to that, which is that you guys can iterate and fix mistakes and learn, and like we were talking about earlier, how each year you try to better yourselves, and those mazes, they do change over the years.
They do an activity, an exercise here where one designer will pitch a maze and design it and bring it to the finish line and get it open, and then in the subsequent years they pass it to somebody else, so that another designer comes in and puts their stamp on it. And now it's a real family affair, and you get all these different points of view, so that the mazes are never stagnant. They're always evolving, always growing. Hey, let's change this up. Even something like Paranormal Inc., they changed the complete ending to that one year, made it so much better, and it was already very good.
Right. And that's actually brilliant. I never thought about how you guys go about that. That's a really brilliant strategy to purposely not have the original maze designer change it up in the subsequent years, have a different set of eyes, a different artistic creativity. That's brilliant. That explains also why things do in many cases get better and get and change, and
they get plussed. We say
they get plussed. Yeah, that's brilliant. That's great.
And then also this year we have the lantern that we're offering to guests. There's a Knott's Berry Farm Scarelopoly game you can buy, and then the No Boo necklace, which we're offering this year. Which, if you saw the live stream, you know how people felt about that.
Oh yeah, well, of course, at the live stream, at the live event, you're gonna get your core.
Those are the diehards.
Yeah, those are the diehards. I mean, like I said, I would have been there, but there were so many people there that are so passionate about Scary Farm, the big fans. And of course, they're the ones that aren't going to wear the Boo necklaces. I mean, you probably didn't have a single person there that's going to wear a Boo necklace. But hey, it makes it accessible to other people that maybe want to go with friends or their family, or it could be a mom that is really scared and her kids are not. And
that's what it's for. It's for the chaperone who's bringing all the teens, because they can't come without a chaperone if their moms won't let them. So the mom wears the necklace, and now moms have a devil's elixir drink and not worried that it's going to get spilled. I think it's a fun idea. We'll see how it plays out, but if you don't want to buy it, don't buy it. But it's available for those who want, and it's no big deal. It's going to be fun.
Right. What I'm excited about this year is, we talked about those new mazes. They sound really good, all three of them. I'm excited for Cinema Slasher because I love haunts. I love them, but I love what they really come from, which is from horror, the horror genre, movies, TV shows, especially movies. And any maze that I've seen over the years that's about, whether it be based on real IP or, as you guys do, originals, but for example, about horror movies or that genre, usually resonates really well with me. So I'm excited for that one. But what I'm excited for is the mazes that are returning from the past years, because it's almost, in a way, it's they're ones that you already had from last year, but in certain ways they're almost like greatest hits. The mazes like The Depth, Mesmer, Grimoire, those are three Scary Farm mazes that they're probably in my top 5 of all time, of all the years I've been going. So you guys have such a strong lineup, and I can't wait to see, what pluses happen to those. So
we'll simply look at what we were talking about earlier. Like, we only did Trapped singly, so 12, 13, 14. Each year it was completely different than the year before. And we have a lot of people lamenting, like, oh, I wish I'd give anything to have gone through Trapped. It was only 1 year.
Me.
Yeah, right. So you have these mazes that last 4 or 5 years if they're really strong, like Trick or Treat lasted quite a few years because they plussed it with the flashlight gimmick. And you get a chance to experience it again. Oh, I remember this. This is great. Or I didn't get to see it last year. But no, the one-offs are tough because we've only done them a few times. Beowulf was only 1 year. Trapped 1, 2, 3 was only 1 year.
Right. Yeah, it's not as easy because it's a lot more work for sure. And actually, speaking of all that work, so you mentioned, of course, there were 3 new mazes this year. Is that a record for the most number of new mazes? Obviously, we're not counting the beginning or the early years, but for typical from year to year, has it ever been that many?
No, that's actually about average. 2 to 3 is about average. Sometimes that third one is taking a maze that already exists and doing an overlay, like the Asylum became Lockdown the Asylum, or there was just an overlay. Delirium and Tooth Fairy were very similar, so it was an overlay. But like I was talking earlier, in the early 2000s, there was a push from upper management to get to that magic number of 13 mazes. We need 13 mazes. That's the number. So we were doing more than 2 or 3 those years to get to that number.
Right. And now you've dialed back, right?
Yeah, there's 10.
Right. So, because I remember, because like I said, I went in 2000, 2001, and I remember there being more mazes. That's my, I don't have vivid memories of every single maze, but so I might have asked you this before, but I just don't remember. So what is the reason to have dialed back to 10 from, say, 12, 13?
Well, that began with a conscious effort to not impact day guests, so that when people came to the park for a regular day of fun fall fantasy stuff at Knott's Berry Farm, they weren't met at every turn with giant walls. Because we used to have a maze on Fiesta Plaza. It blocked the whole Fiesta area. There were a number of those around the park where you'd walk in and it'd just be this huge conglomeration of walls and black tarps, and it just wasn't pretty and it wasn't fun for the day guests. So opening up the back areas and being creative where you put your mazes, suddenly they're in the background now, which helps for the night as well, because you don't walk up and see it. You get in line and you can see it around the corner and it's coming, and you're oh my God, there it is,
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I've noticed that because I've been to Knott's during the day past couple of years when I've come down there for Scary Farm, and during the day you don't see it. It's like a transformation.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. It's a better presentation for your guests.
Sure.
Interruptive.
You have to think of those people who come during the day. I never met them personally, but they're awake during the day. I don't know what that's about, but I hear that it is a thing.
That's great. Yep. Makes sense. You were talking about, plussing up and doing special things, overlays of mazes. One of my favorites of all time was for Trick or Treat. You actually just mentioned a few minutes ago, Trick or Treat lights out with those Gantum flashlights, those location sensitive flashlights, I guess using Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, whatever they use. And I got to experience that, and that was wild, going through there with no lighting inside at all, with the flashlights, and they would blink and change colors and turn on and off. And it really made the experience very creepy and unique, and I really enjoyed that. Now, you mentioned, it was mentioned, of course, during the live stream, these lanterns that guests can buy, these interactive lanterns. So are those lanterns kind of doing something similar to those Gantum flashlights, kind of interacting program? Are they going to interact to wireless signals, and are they going to kind of work, the same kind of way?
Yeah, it's RFD chips. It's the future. We're all going to have them in our arm eventually.
Right. You don't have one yet?
No, I'm on the list. They change color, but they also physically make things move or change in the mazes and scare zones. So it's more like a Harry Potter wand, if you think about it.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm definitely planning on buying one. It'd also be a nice keepsake to bring back home. And I like, putting things on display,
it's really cool.
Park memorabilia.
I remember being in the meetings for those, I think about 2 years ago. Trying to figure out, like, what is it? What does it do? All ideas are welcome. And if you saw the Midsummer presentation, Ken talked about having it scream in March. Like, it would just start screaming at the midway point between Halloween.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So, and that came out of a conversation of, I said, well, does it have to be within the confines of Scary Farm? Like, what if you took it home? Because I was imagining like someone would take it back to their hotel room at the Knott's Hotel. And I said, well, what if it just started doing stuff at like 4 a.m. when you think it's all over? So that snowballed into all these crazy things it would do after. But I think it was decided that let's just keep it right now in Scary Farm so that people don't freak out.
That's really creative, though. I mean, I personally, I get it why you guys made that decision, but I would be of the camp of, oh, please make it do things, random.
Well, yeah, I was all on board. I was like, let's make it do everything, Do you know the teen buzz mosquito noise? Do you know what that is?
No.
There's a high frequency band of noises that you can't hear once you're over 35. So if you go on YouTube and type in teen buzz mosquito, it will play a tone and it'll say, okay, your speakers are working. You can hear that. But if you're over 35, you can't hear anything else. But everybody in the area under 35 thinks they're being tortured by it. So
right.
Well, why don't we have it do that?
Some age-based stuff. Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I love it. Well, yeah, I'm definitely planning on buying one of those lanterns, as I mentioned, and I'm looking forward to, again, having it as a keepsake, but also using it while I'm there those 3 nights. So one thing I'm wondering about, I'm sure you guys have figured this out, but, let's say, those sell really well, which I bet they will, and you've got a group of people, on the conga line there, going through the mazes, or you guys don't necessarily do full conga lines, but, you're setting a lot of people through all together. If they all have those lanterns, if you have a group that all has those lanterns, 20 people, is it going to make it too bright in the maze, or have you guys figured that out already?
No, they're not that bright.
Okay.
It's not like a flashlight. No, it's much more subdued.
Okay, nice.
No, they wouldn't have brought them in if it was going to affect the scare factor in those mazes. That's the first rule. Don't affect the mazes. The scary part.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Great. Glad to hear it. I figured you guys figured that out. That's great. So you mentioned that you're directing not 1 but 2 Scary Farm shows this year. You mentioned already those 2 that and it makes sense, the 2 that you're directing. Of course, The Hanging is your baby. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And then the Cleaver show. What's the name of the Cleaver show again?
Dr. Cleaver Returns.
Dr. Cleaver Returns. Just the way you describe that show with the comedic horror and the sensuality. That totally makes sense. You would do that with your sense of humor. I hope to be able to see that. And that's in the Birdcage Theater.
In the Birdcage, yeah.
Right. That's where Ed Alonzo was last year, if I remember correctly.
Last year was Zabrecki.
Oh, Zabrecki. Okay.
Yeah.
Ed Alonzo's been there year.
Oh, he's been there. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but not last year. That's why I'm thinking of 2 different things. Got it. I've seen too many magicians. I start mixing them up. But he was great. Zabrecki was great too. Mm-hmm. So has it been a challenge for you? Is this the first time you're directing more than one show in the same year? Or?
Yeah. I've been working on the scripts for both of them for months, and directing them back to back. So there'll be this past week I've done daytime rehearsals, and then next week I move to 5 p.m. to 2:30 a.m. rehearsals for The Hanging, and then the week that we open I do 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Cleaver, and then 5 p.m. to 2 Hanging until we open. So yeah, it's a challenge, but I'm doing what I love, so it doesn't bother me at all.
Wow. So I'm assuming that based on the time frames you mentioned there, since Knott's is a 365-day-a-year park, you guys are not necessarily rehearsing these in the normal rehearsals, at least at the location where they're being performed. So you guys have like some kind of offsite building, or maybe they're on site that's the backstage that you use? Or?
Well, right now the Birdcage is only used during the weekend, so we were able to get in there and use the space. Okay. For the Wagon Camp, as long as we're not there when the Crazy Kirk Band is playing and we start late, we can skip the guests and work at night.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you're still able to do it at the venue. Good. Yeah, because I know that The Hanging normally is a very physical show, so it'll be important to be there at the staging location. Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, I know how hard it's been. How much I've gotten a sense, I should say, of how time consuming it's been for you for writing and now directing these shows, because you're always so gracious about being a guest here on the podcast. We appreciate that, and like I said, you're the only one that's been on all 3 seasons so far. And you have that record, if you will. You'll have to get you a plaque or something for you for that. But it was usually it's been pretty easy to schedule with you, which I've always been surprised by, because I know you're so busy. But this year it was a little bit more of a challenge, understandably, but I appreciate you working with your schedule to talk to us here. It's been great. So speaking of those shows, we have to dive into what is one of my favorite experiences ever at Scary Farm that I've had over the years, and something that went away, as you and I talked about in our first interview in season 1. So there I was, again, about a week ago, watching that live stream, and I was excited to learn what the new mazes were and whatnot. But there was one thing I was waiting for, and that was for the announcement, because it had been rumored, and I talked to you a little bit offline, what had been mentioned in Midsummer Scream, and about the hanging coming back, and of course you weren't going to tell me, you couldn't tell me, understandably, but I was hopeful that it was coming back, because based on what I had heard from Midsummer Scream and everything. And there you guys went through all just the mazes, the scare zones, everything, and then the shows, and I'm like, and meanwhile I was texting with my buddy Freddie, and his girlfriend Bella. They were watching the live stream too. They live in LA. And we were like, oh man, no hanging, but the event's still gonna be great, but oh man, no hanging. And then at the end, Jeff, you pulled a Steve Jobs. now, just now for the audience, of course, you know what I'm talking about, Jeff. For the audience that is not familiar, Steve Jobs, again, former CEO, founder of Apple, the late great Steve Jobs. I miss him. He was an amazing leader, controversial in certain ways, but amazing leader, kind of like the first coming of Elon Musk, if you will. But he was famous in his keynotes, in his introductions of new products, at trade shows and keynotes and whatnot, of being a great showman, and not putting on a comedy show or horror show like you do at Knott's, but more introducing products and new concepts. And he was famous for going through and introducing a bunch of things and then saving a big surprise for last. And he would say, we've got a great list of products for you guys. We're excited to introduce all of these, but we've got one more thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you pulled a one more thing moment. So first of all, Jeff, was that inspired by Steve Jobs, or is that, what was the story there, how you did that?
Well, there was a lot of ideas on how to reveal that to the audience. I wasn't happy with any of them. I was like, this is going to be a big moment. We need to make it a big moment. I originally pitched that I would say that the show was over, and then someone would bring out an orange and black like present, and I would open it up and pull out the noose. And I was like, it's not big enough. And we did a bit in the saloon where Cameo Kate would sing, and as she held her arms out, a feather boa would drop from the ceiling onto her shoulders. And I said, we have a box that does that. So what if we put it up there, put a giant oversized noose in it, and just drop it center stage? It needs no introduction. And it's not Steve Jobs that I take my cues from. I take them from a guy named William Castle. Do you know who William Castle was?
Oh yeah, you've mentioned him before.
That's my hero.
Yeah,
William Castle. Yeah. He made a lot of schlock horror films.
Right.
But it didn't matter if the movie was good or bad. It was how he sold it. He's the guy that put a nurse in the lobby and said, she's here in case anybody has a heart attack. They would put an ambulance in front of the theater. During House on Haunted Hill, he had skeletons that were on wires that would fly over the audience. The movie The Tingler, the seat would vibrate like something was coming to get you. All the stuff that they do in like It's Tough to Be a Bug and Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. William Castle invented all of that.
That's brilliant.
So I always looked for William Castle, like he's the guy. What would he do? William Castle, Roger Corman. What's his name from Trauma? I can't think of his name. Lloyd Kaufman. I love all that stuff. And if you can bring a little bit of schlocky cheese to it, and like, what did I do? Point like I was the Babe Ruth. Like, look at this, and then if you'd been on that stage, oh my gosh, you'd thought I'd brought out one of the Beatles. It was insane.
Oh yeah. That's amazing. That's awesome. So in our first interview back in season 1, Jeff, we talked a lot about the hanging, because again, it's a favorite of mine, and it's something that it's your baby. It's one of your babies. And I know you guys have other writers working on it too, but I know it's very much you are very involved with it.
I've been working this year with Ken Parks, who's a guy who created Ghost Town Alive. Like, he's uber talented. He has since moved up to the corporate world here at Cedar Fair, but he carved out some time to help me on this, and I couldn't be happier.
Oh, that's great. Oh, wow. I'm really excited, because Ghost Town Alive is amazing. So, oh, wow, that's great. That's great. So when we did our first interview, again, 2 years ago, you talked about how, how edgy it was and non-PC, and how, the witches were protesting out front of the park, literally, because they were offended, and that led to its cancellation. So now you're bringing it back as the hanging uncanceled, and oh my gosh, what an epic and appropriate name, because it's the cancel culture and the ridiculous of it that exists in the world, and how it's kind of like be a little edgy here. It's a haunt interview, middle finger to cancel culture. I love that you guys are doing that. So, and I know, you and I've got to know each other personally, and we have, a lot of similarities in our perspectives. And I know you personally, you're very non-PC, and, you're all about, you are the hanging, the type of content it is. And, you don't offend easily, neither do I. But again, you don't run Cedar Fair and so forth. So, what's interesting about Knott's is, there's a number of theme parks out there that do haunts, and some of them are independent parks. They can do a lot more. They don't have as much oversight, really any oversight. But then you have, Cedar Fair and Six Flags and, Universal and, all these more corporate parks that have these giant corporations that, cancel culture. They're always scared of cancel culture potentially. So how is it that, Cedar Fair and Knott's management, they're okay with bringing back the hanging? Again, I'm thrilled it's coming back. I'm just curious what happened. What changed? Is it they realized how ridiculous cancel culture is, and they're kind of pushing back? What's going on here?
The main thrust is it's the 50th. You got to do it for the 50th. You can't have a 50th anniversary and not do one of the signature shows here. So somebody at corporate said, you have to do the hanging. And I was like, yes, we should do the hanging. Let's do it again. And that process started in February. I've been working on this script since February. Wow. We're up to draft 15 on it. We've gone through 6 storylines, 6 ideas for what the plot would be. So we've really put a lot of work into it. And it was simply a matter of, it's been 4 years. It's time to have a sense of humor again. There's a lot of dirty movies coming out. Stray Dogs just came out. Oh yeah. That movie where Jennifer Lawrence is paid to be that guy's girlfriend for a car. Like, there's movies that come out that are edgy and dirty like they used to be. And there weren't any picket lines for them. I think we're moving past all of this puritanism of, I can't be offended in any way, clutching my pearls. Like, who wants to live like that? So Amen. It's the 50th. It's time to bring it back. And then the other caveat in all of that is we're doing it at the wagon camp. So when it's outdoors at the Mine Stage, or where it was born at Calico Square Stage, which doesn't even exist anymore, you could walk by on your way to get a churro and hear something. You could see Justin Bieber being shot, and you'd go, oh my God, I didn't sign up for that. So it's a little different this year in that if you want to see the hanging, seating is going to be limited. So you got to get there early. You have to want to see it. It's not something you accidentally see or hear. I've got a sign on the door that says, once you enter through here, you are not allowed to complain. If you're here for internet points, you should just leave now. It's not for you. The show is dirty. The show is filthy. The show is violent. We're not hiding it in any way. It's not a switcheroo. And then there's a disclaimer at the front of the show where somebody that you've seen before comes out and says, you don't want to be here. It's not for you. So we're giving them every opportunity. So I don't see how you could complain, and you'll be here opening night. If you see the show opening night, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I can't give away any of the plot details, but we're taking the bull by the horns. It's going to be great. And anything that I or my co-writer Ken was second guessing was eliminated last Thursday night when we saw the crowd's reaction to me up there saying the show is back. It's no holds barred, and it's going to piss you off if you see this. So there's no hiding it. To me, I just think it's really funny that you can show people being disemboweled. You can rip their heads off and have a fountain of blood coming out like Kill Bill. But if you make like a tiny little sexual joke, people will get upset. I have no explanation for it. I wish people would just get a sense of humor. But more importantly, if you don't like it, you don't have to see it. But
right.
we're really happy with it. It's going to be a lot of fun. There are no
Nice.
sacred cows in it, and rehearsals start on Tuesday. So I'm excited. Like I always tell the same story. In 1994, the first Scary Farm I worked, I was on in Ghost Town at the Silver Dollar Saloon. Again, it's not even there anymore. But
Right.
we sold sodas and popcorn and chips, and I'd work the counter until midnight and then close up and go home. But on my breaks, I'd go see the hanging. You know,
Right.
I'd see it in Calico Square. 94 was the year they opened with Forrest Gump, and a big fake feather flew over the audience to the stage. The year after that, it was Hugh Grant in a car with Divine Brown, if anybody remembers that incident. You know, I'd watch it and go, I could do that. I just want a shot. So in 2001, I was invited to be a contributor to the show, and I wrote some jokes for the show, and I was really proud, like, oh my gosh, because I had done plays at the college level, and the first night of the first show of The Hanging, more people saw my work than anything I had done combined, right? Because there's so many people out there. So from 2001 to 2011, I was a contributor to the show, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever. Like, you could write these dirty jokes, and you could make these references and put in stuff you liked and stuff you hated, and the crowd would go crazy for it. I wrote all these Bud Light commercials. Have you ever heard those?
No.
You remember Bud Light presents Real Men of Genius?
Oh yeah. Oh, those are great commercials. Yeah.
So we did Bud Light presents Real Monsters of Genius. They were all about theme park stuff. Like, today we salute you, Mr. Glow in the Dark Necklace Salesman. And then we had the full track, and the guy, you know, Mr. Glow in the Dark Necklace Salesman.
Right,
so I wrote those,
yeah.
and there were just weird years of like throwing all this stuff in there. And when they came to me early this year and said, look, we're going to bring the show back and we want you to direct it, I was like, oh my God.
Right.
I get to do it. I'm at the big show finally. So I'm really proud of what Ken and I have put together, and I can't wait to get it on that stage starting Tuesday. We've got a cast that's beyond talented. We've got a crew that's putting it all together. I got a fight coordinator guy who's going to teach them all how to duke-a-roo, and it's going to be a blast.
That's amazing. So yeah, I know that you've been involved with The Hanging from talking to you and interviewing you previously, Jeff. But is this your first year actually directing the show?
First year directing The Hanging, yeah.
Oh, so you were doubly excited because you were thrilled for The Hanging to come back, and then you got the helm of it. Wow, you must have. I bet you went home that night, and like your wife Rachel, right? You must have been so excited to tell her all about it, right?
Yeah, and she just looked at me and said, "I'm never going to see you. You're going to be home every night." And I said, "Yeah, well, it's called Haunt Widows."
Right. That's in those couple months, right?
I was actually in The Hanging one year as a performer in 1997 as well.
Oh wow, that's great! Wow, I had no idea The Hanging existed for so long. I thought it was a recent construct. And you were saying that at the live stream, and I saw that, not live, but I saw it on the camera there on the video feed. The reaction of the crowd, just that one more thing, and just people exploding. So that was so validating for you and Ken, right? That's what
was great. Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's awesome, and a really good point that you made, because previously it was at where the Carnival de Grotesque is, right? It's outside, right? That's where I remember seeing it myself. But putting it in the wagon camp, again, more secluded inside, that way people won't get exposed. People with sensitive ears or whatnot won't get exposed. So that's brilliant.
For the first time in its ever 40+ year history, you can sit down.
Right, which is great. Yeah.
We've never had seats.
Yeah, because there were no seats outdoors at the Calico. Yeah. So, well, and again, I know you're not going to reveal anything about the plot. I don't expect you to. I'm just going to make kind of a statement, and you can nod or whatever. But one, you haven't had the show since 2019. 2020 there wasn't because of COVID and all that, and then you've not had the show the last couple of years. So 4 years of material potentially, but also given those 4 years and what's going on with politics, with COVID, Putin, all this, I can only imagine what I can only begin to imagine what you guys are going to do in this show. I mean, there's so much material. So,
Well,
yeah,
the challenge has been to keep it at a decent running time and to not
right,
put
right,
everything you want in the show. So there are times where Ken and I will meet on on Teams Zoom and just toast these great jokes that have to go because there's just no time for them. Oh yeah, no, it's a really tough process. It's a great process, but you have to learn not to hold anything sacred because everything is cuttable until you get to the stage.
Right. No, of course. Yeah. If anything, you have too
Plus,
much.
the hanging is the only show that we change during the run. So if something
really
happens during the run, I write a joke and it's right in.
Oh, really? So if something crazy happens, pop culture, politics, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
In the late September, early October, whatever it is, you will change it.
You put it right in. Absolutely. Oh,
interesting. Yeah. Now, did you do the same trick that you've told me about before this year, where you and Ken put in those jokes that are just so over the top to make the ones you really want in?
Yeah.
And you still do that?
Yeah, you have to do that.
I love it. I love it.
You have to.
That's fantastic. Well, I am looking forward to so much about Scary Farm this year. Some of the returning greats, like the Depths is one of my favorite haunt attractions anywhere, of all time. The independent haunts, theme park haunts, etc. Same thing with Mesmer and Grimoire. Again, those are my three favorites from the ones returning. These new mazes sound great. The Lantern, the shows, so many shows this year. But I think the thing I'm most looking forward to, and you mentioned about me being there on opening night, this is the first year I'll ever be there opening night. Excited for. I may not get to all the mazes opening night. Again, I'm going to be there for 3 nights. But it is my plan to definitely do the hanging the first night, because that is what I'm looking forward to the most, for sure.
Well, it's if you look back at any of the years that the hanging's been up, you can see that opening night's very special because no jokes have been cut yet.
Right. Right.
and sometimes they do get cut.
So I'm curious about that. So I'm assuming, obviously, especially that first night, that you have, whether it be Knott's management or higher level Cedar Fair management on site. Are they gonna be kind of gauging if there's any really boos or people really get pissed off or something, and those are the things that get cut? Is that what it is?
No, they're very supportive. No, they're very supportive. I couldn't have more support.
Oh, that's great.
On the management level. No, they know exactly what the show is. There's no surprises in it. They've looked at everything. When I say things get cut, we've had some heads of entertainment in the past that have not been up on slang and what's going on. And so we've put some stuff in that's been pretty racy. And the opening night, they'll say, "Can you explain that joke?" And I go, "Well, it kind of means this." And they go, "Are you kidding?" So, yeah.
Okay. So to make it basically to make the show better, you might cut a couple things if they're not.
No, it would be just for time this year. Just for time.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm even more excited that I got to see it opening
because there's so much to do at Scary Farm that anything above 25 minutes, people start looking at their Apple Watches and going, "I got to get in a maze. What am I doing here?" Even if the show is firing on all cylinders.
Right. You know what's interesting too, Jeff, is it's not just the theme of the hanging and the edginess of it that makes it a good show. It's got to have that great writing and the great acting, because one of the things I did last year was one of the most disappointing things. So I'm a big fan of SeaWorld, their parks. They, in my opinion, I've said it again and again, and we've interviewed them here on the podcast, SeaWorld and Busch Gardens. What they do best is their entertainment. They put on some great shows. They really do. They do great Christmas shows. They have good Halloween shows. So when I went to Busch Gardens Tampa last year for the first time for their Halloween, their Halloween event, they have this somewhat long-running show, which is like the hanging. I forget the name of it, but they do it out there in Gwazi Field, big stage. And it's a parody show with crude jokes, and they get pretty crude and everything. But Jeff, the writing was so bad. I was like, oh boy, this show, it needs help. It needs Jeff Tucker or something. Anyway, so it's not just that you're doing crude humor. You can't just do crude humor.
You can't just come out and say fart number 2.
Right.
Fart. It doesn't work that way. And that's a credit to what Ken and I have done this year is we've concentrated the most on, does the plot make sense? Does it have a story? It's not just a review of here's something you like that we're going to kill. It's not like that. It actually has a beginning, a middle, and an end that we're really happy. I mean, and that's taken up until the script was in flux up until a day and a half ago. So we took it all the way down to the wire to make sure that it does satisfy, because the reason you hate bad movies is they don't make any sense.
Right.
Your brain is like, this doesn't make any sense.
Yep. I've definitely seen a few of those. I know you have. You're like me. You're not afraid to critique movies.
No, that's what I do.
Yep. Both big movies.
But I'm also not afraid to roll up my sleeves. And like last year, I directed A Christmas Carol and Gift to the Magi for Christmas. And those are like perennials. Everybody knows those. And even those had issues with the story. So I'd sat in my office and like, I'm not going to improve Charles Dickens, but I'm going to improve this version of it and make it more satisfying. So the audience is like, oh, I get that. That's great. And not leave something unresolved at the end.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Just editing it for content or to kind of flesh out and make the story make sense.
Remember, there was a big budget movie that came out not that long ago where they said the Emperor's back. Somehow he's back.
Yeah.
And they never explained anything. And that's why people hate that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If you treat the audience like they're dumb, they're not going to like you. They're not going to like your show.
Yeah, that was one of the bigger disappointments of recent years.
The Emperor's back somehow.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah, they could have done that better. Yeah,
I actually went to an event over the weekend, and I sat in a chair directly in front of J.J. Abrams for over 4 hours, and it took every ounce not to turn around and go, the Emperor's back somehow, but it wasn't the time or place, so I didn't do it.
Good restraint there, Jeff.
I showed restraint.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for reflecting back on the history of Knott's Scary Farm. So those are some great stories, and just getting that perspective of those early years, which certainly I didn't go to, and I bet a lot of our listeners didn't go to have that kind of perspective and history, but also to talking all about this year's event. I'm really excited, and I've got so many friends that I'm going with. David's planning on going too, and again, we're all really excited. I think this is probably going to be the best year ever. Certainly my attending of Scary Farm. I just so much I'm looking forward to. So thanks for sharing.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited. I'll be exhausted, but I'll be excited.
Yeah, you'll be exhausted, but you'll be proud and feel accomplished. Absolutely. So just a couple things to wrap things up here. Now, again, you've been through our interviews before, so we're not going to go through everything. But one thing I do want to ask you, because this is a new question for season 3, Jeff, and it's a very poignant one. I'll give you the background on it. So Coaster Challenge is not just a podcast. We started off back in 2015 before I was involved. This is David's baby, of course. He's our founder, as a YouTube channel. And, he would meet up with people in the parks and including Knott's. And in fact, I believe this person he met at Knott's. He was one of the first fans, if you will, of Coaster Challenge, a young teenager. His name was Dusty. And became friends with David and his parents and the family, and we, in fact, I interviewed Dusty's mom on our first season of our podcast as well. And Dusty's been on here. And Dusty, sadly, he was about 16 years old or so, sadly passed away way too young this past year, which was awful, just a freak thing that happened. And it hit David especially hard because he was very close with him and his family. And so David, he was really kind of thinking of mortality and what our lives mean and so forth. And he wanted us, in honor of Dusty, to have, and this is the Dusty Lystra question, how would you like your family, your friends, your colleagues to remember you by, Jeff?
Wow, that took a turn. I would like to be remembered as the guy who did what he wanted. That's it. I never worry what people think about me. I don't care if you like me or love me or hate me. I do what I do, and I try to entertain people. It takes a lot of guts to present something that you've created to the world. Most people spend their whole lives never doing it, only being a consumer and never a producer. Those of us that step out and go, I've made something and I want you to look at it. And people go, I don't care for it. Okay, but I still did it. I sat around and did that. So I would love to be remembered as a guy who never took any crap from anybody and did what he wanted. That's it.
That's fantastic. That's a great answer, Jeff. We haven't had that answer to this question. and Jeff, your answer does not surprise me. I'm proud of you. That is quintessential Jeff Tucker right there. And one of the things I think is great about you is you work, and I'm sure you've thought about this before, Jeff. You work in probably one of the most PC industries out there, theme parks and, look at Disney and all their stuff and, all that craziness. But you don't, you just do your own thing and you'll say what you mean. And like, I tell any of my theme park friends, because it's one of my passions, as you know, that are like-minded, that don't offend and appreciate people, that aren't into PC, cancel culture, all that stuff. Tell them, you got to send a friend request to Jeff Tucker. You will love what he shares. It'll be like,
that's where those are coming from.
Yes, that's from me, a little bit for me at least. But yeah, you will be blown away by how open he is, and he just says what he believes, and it's so refreshing, really, because in the world we live in these days, it's not like that, and it used to be your opinion was your opinion. There's just words. Yeah, you shoot someone, yeah, you go to jail or worse because you've physically done something that's really bad, that's awful. It's just like the old kids rhyme, sticks and stones may hurt my bones, but words will never hurt me, whatever it went by.
Yeah, that's out the window.
It used to be, that's how it was. That's growing up in the 80s. That's how it was. Words, you make fun of kids, whatever kids say the things to each other, but it's, but it's, you get over it. It's just words. But nowadays words are worse than anything else, it seems like, for some people, which is ridiculous. So,
that's crazy. Along the same lines, like, I also fight fiercely for the people that work for me. Like, I protect them, and I've earned their trust in ways that they wouldn't trust a quote unquote boss, because I always am out looking out for them. One of my best friends, this guy Jeff, he did Trapped year 3 for me. He didn't want to do it. He's like, I'm only doing it, Tucker, because it's you and I trust you. And I said, great, because I'm going to make you wear a dress. And he's a complete, like, manly sports guy. And he looked at it was a little pink dress with a little hat, and he said, are you nuts? And I said, Jeff, I want you to trust me. I said, I'm going to make you the scariest guy in this maze. People are going to drop to the floor when they see you. And opening weekend, he wouldn't wear it. He put it in a bag and he carried it through the park, and he would only dress right at the maze right before he went in, because he also wore, like, lipstick and rouge and everything. Yep. And by weekend 2, he was walking through that park wearing that dress, strutting, because he was the baddest mofo on farm. And he came to me and he said, I'll never doubt you. And I said, I would never steer you wrong. I said, I am always out for you before anything, and making the guest the centerpiece of this. And that was for Trap year 3. It was a room that was set up to be a little girl's room, but you met him, and it was terrifying. You said boysenberry to end the experience. Right. You got your safe word. The group of guys that played that character got more boysenberries than anybody in the maze. I bet. And sometimes it was just because they walked in the room. Yeah. Wow. That's because it's so shocking and jarring. Yeah, that makes sense. And I love that you, as a manager, that's how you are. I've had a number of jobs over the years. I've worked for some good managers and some bad ones, and some ones we all have. I mean, it's just the way it is. You remember those good ones, and you're like, oh my God, what a mentor. Well, and absolutely. And one of the best ones, I sadly, he passed away from ALS a couple of years ago. A great memorial for him, because he was such a loved person. And why was he one of the best managers I ever had? Because he took care of his people. He looked out for his team. You have to. The best managers do, and the worst ones don't, unfortunately. So it's good to see you're a good manager. Doesn't surprise me at all. So one last thing here, Jeff, and this is a question you've answered before. And if you have anything you'd like to share, great. If not, if you run out of stuff, that's fine. But is there any kind of advice you'd like to share with our listeners? Any pearls of wisdom? Well, you know what? On Thursday night, I met one of the Scary Farm fans, and he couldn't even talk. He was, oh my God, I can't believe it's you. I'm like, it's all cool, man. I'm just a regular dude who goes up and talks crazy. It's all good, man. And when he finally relaxed, he wanted to know how to get in the business. Like I'm going to college. What do I do? I said, take theater classes, take theater production classes. You know, it's the question I get the most often is, how do I do what you do? And I say, well, I was a theater kid. I was in drama in high school. I was president of the drama club. When high school, when I graduated, I went right to college and started at the bottom and worked my way right up to, they produced my shows that I wrote at the college level. And that was like a big thing for me. And a guy came and gave a talk at the college and he said, are you doing good here? Are you like at the top of your game? And we're all like, there's a bunch of us like, yeah, we're at the top of our game. He said, then you should leave. You should get out of here and let somebody else take over. And I was like, oh my God. And I jetted at that moment. A week later, I was gone. I was like, I've taken that advice, but I ended up taking classes at the Groundlings. Like I'm the greatest improver in the world. Yeah, sure you are. I went to the Groundlings and started again way at the bottom and had to work my way up. It takes work and perseverance, and you have to want it, and you have to work for it. It doesn't come overnight. You know, I saw The Hanging in '94. 20 years later, I get to direct it. But the 20 years that it took for me to get here, I spent the whole time learning how to direct it.
Right.
So it's just a matter of work hard, persevere, keep going. You know, I just finished my 5th novel, 500 pages. And when I got the proof copy in the mail, I was like, this took 6 years of my life, 6 years.
Wow.
But to hold it in your hand, you can't believe it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Here somewhere. It's in here somewhere. Oh, there it is. Let me get it. Like, to hold my book in my hands.
Wow. The Tomorrow Machine. Nice.
And now it's going to take a year to edit it. So it's not even done.
Right. Is that based on time travel? What is that about?
Yeah, this is book 5 in my series. And in book 4, I trapped my main character in 1904. So I had to figure out how to get her home, and this is how she gets home.
Oh, I see. Interesting. Yeah. Wow. Prolific. Yeah. That's,
you asked how people I want people to remember me. I want my kids to remember that Dad wrote 5 books totaling 2,500 pages, and that one day they'll sit down and actually read them.
Love it. I love it. Yeah. But great advice about always challenging yourself. And if you're not challenged, you got to find something else. That's a really good advice. Yeah, we've not had that advice before. That's great.
I just read it online. A guy that I really trust, a guy named Kevin Gregg, who's done some shows for me. He said, if you're comfortable, get out, because you shouldn't be comfortable. You should be uncomfortable and working towards comfortable.
Right. Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, though. Thank you, Jeff. That's great advice. And thank you for, again, talking all about Scary Farm, both the past and what's coming up here this year, the present and future. Thank you so much.
It's going to be a great run. I look forward to seeing you in the fog, sir.
Absolutely. Same.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you want to see more of us, we upload every Friday. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. All at Coaster Challenge. Links are in the description below. Thanks for joining us here today.